Dr. Elias Thorne, a man whose life was a meticulous series of academic pursuits, rode the late-night bus home. Rain smeared streaks across the window, mirroring the quiet melancholy that often accompanied his solitary commute. He watched his tired reflection pass through the city's muted glow, lost in the familiar rhythm of his own thoughts. At the next stop, the doors hissed open, admitting a lone figure. A woman in a worn janitor's uniform boarded, her movements gentle, unassuming. As she settled into a seat a few rows ahead, a soft, tuneless hum escaped her lips. It was a melody, ancient and familiar, that instantly pierced the quiet. Elias froze, a jolt of recognition shooting through him so sharp it stole his breath. The world tilted on its axis. The simple, wordless tune was unmistakable. His carefully constructed composure, the academic armor he wore daily, shattered. The soft hum was not just a sound, it was a ghost, a whisper from a life he'd painstakingly buried decades ago. Fragmented images flashed through his mind, the warm embrace of his immigrant grandmother, her voice singing this very song, the bright, mischievous eyes of his younger sister Clara, her small hand clutching his. A physical ache bloomed in Elias's chest, a profound grief he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He gripped the worn leather of his briefcase, struggling against the sudden, overwhelming tide of memory. Then, the woman's humming shifted. A subtle, almost imperceptible lyrical variation, a unique inflection that only his grandmother had ever used, a secret twist in the melody that she had taught only him and Clara. It was a detail so specific, so private, it defied coincidence. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that drowned out the hum of the bus. This wasn't merely a familiar song. It was a direct, impossible echo of his family, a thread woven through generations, now inexplicably sung by a stranger. The mystery deepened, urgent and terrifying. His stop approached, the bus decelerating with a soft sigh. Elias debated. Every instinct screamed at him to speak, to demand answers, to bridge the impossible gap between this woman and his past. But the ingrained reticence of a lifetime, the fear of intrusion, the sheer awkwardness of confronting a stranger with such a profound personal question held him captive. He watched, paralyzed, as Lena Petrova, the janitor, gathered her things and exited the bus at the university stop. Her silhouette disappeared into the drizzly night, carrying with her the secret of his lost family. Elias, gripped by a sudden, fierce self-reproach, could only watch her go, the opportunity dissolving like mist. Elias returned to his apartment, a sanctuary of academic order, but found no comfort in its silence. The meticulously arranged bookshelves, the pristine desk, the quiet hum of his laptop, none could fill the void left by the lullaby's echo. The melody replayed in his mind, a haunting, insistent loop. It was a reminder not just of what he had lost, but of the connection he might have just let slip away. The weight of his solitude, once a chosen companion, now felt like a crushing burden, filled with the ghost of a song and the painful memory of a sister he had failed. The night offered Dr. Elias Thorne no solace. His meticulously ordered apartment, usually a haven of quiet contemplation, felt like a cage. The melody, Lena's gentle hum, replayed in his mind, an insidious, persistent echo. It wasn't just a tune, it was a ghost, a whisper from a past he had painstakingly buried beneath layers of academic achievement and intellectual pursuits. He paced, the plush Persian rug doing little to cushion the agitated rhythm of his steps. Doot. This cannot be coincidence, he thought, the phrase hardening into a conviction. It's statistically impossible. He had tried to rationalize it away, to dismiss it as a trick of his memory, a shared cultural artifact. But the unique lyrical shift, the one his grandmother had taught only him and Clara, screamed otherwise. Sleep offered no escape. The song demanded answers. The professor's ordered life was about to take an unexpected detour. Morning light, usually a welcome signal for Elias to dive into his research, felt intrusive. He moved to his study, a room lined with dense academic tomes. His gaze, however, didn't fall on the philosophy texts or historical analyses. Instead, it drifted to a small, unassuming shelf in a corner, holding a single worn paperback, The Silent Ocean Asterisk, by E. Thorne. His secret. This was Elias's other life, the one no one at the university knew about. Under a pen name, He wrote novels, deeply personal stories, often exploring themes of loss, unspoken grief, and the quiet resilience of the human spirit. The protagonist of *The Silent Ocean had been a man haunted by a lost sibling, driven by regret. This hidden creativity, this capacity for profound emotion, starkly contrasted with his carefully constructed academic exterior. He's not just a professor, he's a secret author whose bestsellers explore themes of the very loss he's now confronting. The next day, Elias arrived at the university an hour before his first lecture, a deviation from his usual precise schedule. He lingered in the hushed, cavernous hallways of the humanities building, ostensibly reviewing notes on his tablet, but his senses were acutely tuned to the sounds around him. The distant hum of a floor buffer, the clinking of keys, the faint scent of industrial cleaner. He wasn't looking for a specific face yet, just a pattern, a presence. He moved from the library to the main lecture hall, then to the administrative offices, a silent, academic phantom. He tried to blend into the quiet hum of the campus before the students arrived, observing the various members of the cleaning staff without appearing obvious or intrusive. The esteemed professor is now a quiet observer, searching for a face in the crowd, a face connected to a song. He found her in the East Wing, polishing a stretch of ornate wooden railing. Lena Petrova, her name tag confirmed, pushing a cleaning cart laden with cloths and sprays. Her movements were efficient, almost fluid, a practiced grace honed by years of repetitive labor. Her simple uniform, though clean, showed faint signs of wear at the elbows. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, escaping strands softly framing a face that, even in repose, held a quiet, unassuming dignity. Elias felt a jolt of recognition, a mix of relief that he had found her, and a surge of trepidation about what came next. She was real, tangible, and humming the very song that had shattered his composure. He found her, the humble janitor who unknowingly holds the key to his family's deepest secret. Later that morning, safe within the confines of his office, Elias found himself humming the lullaby, his voice barely audible. He focused on the specific, altered phrase, the one that broke from the traditional melody, the one that had stopped his heart on the bus. Asterisk. Sleep, my star. Let the night unfold. A secret whispered, brave and bold. His grandmother, a woman whose life had been a testament to resilience, had taught him and Clara that particular change. Asterisk. This is our special version. Asterisk, she'd said, her eyes twinkling. Asterisk. A secret, just for us, to guide you home, always. It wasn't just any lullaby. It's a coded message from the past, and Lena is its unwitting messenger. The academic day wore on, but Elias's mind was elsewhere. He knew he had to speak to Lena, but how? Directly confronting her about the lullaby felt too abrupt, too invasive. He considered a formal inquiry through HR, but that felt cold, transactional, far removed from the deeply personal nature of his quest. No, he needed a subtle approach, something respectful, that wouldn't alarm her or make her feel like an object of study. Perhaps a casual conversation, an offer to help with a heavy cleaning cart, a shared moment in the break room. He would create an opening, build a bridge, before daring to ask the question that had consumed him. The professor hatches a plan, a delicate dance to uncover a family secret without alarming the woman who holds the key. The aroma of stale coffee and disinfectant hung in the university break room, a stark contrast to the scent of aged leather and polished wood in Elias's office. He had timed his arrival, a calculated maneuver that felt both absurd and profoundly necessary. Lena Petrova sat at a small chipped table, nursing a steaming mug, her shoulders slumped with a quiet exhaustion. Her uniform, though clean, bore the subtle wear of countless shifts. Elias approached the coffee machine, feigning a struggle with the complex contraption. "Good morning," he offered, his voice a carefully modulated academic murmur. "Having trouble with this beast myself." Lena looked up, her tired eyes holding a surprising kindness. "Good morning, Professor. Sometimes it needs a firm hand." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips as she watched him. Elias managed a weak smile in return, his gaze lingering on her for a moment, longer than strictly polite. He noted the lines of resilience etched around her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture even in repose. She possessed a dignity that transcended her humble station, a quiet grace that resonated deep within him. He felt a strange pang, a hint of warmth in a heart that usually only registered intellectual pursuits. Throughout the day, Elias found himself subtly rerouting his movements. He'd linger a moment longer in the library, pass through the science wing, or take a circuitous route to the faculty lounge. He watched Lena work, a silent, almost invisible observer. He saw her meticulously wipe down desks in lecture halls where he pontificated on literary theory, her movements efficient, almost ritualistic. He saw her quietly collect forgotten papers from the floor, her brow furrowed slightly as she sorted stray pens and notebooks. There was no fanfare, no expectation of praise, just a profound dedication to her tasks. Elias, accustomed to a world where every action was measured, every word weighed, felt a poignant awareness of the vast chasm between their lives. His days were filled with intellectual discourse, grant applications, and the abstract pursuit of knowledge. Hers were defined by tangible effort, by the quiet act of maintaining order in a world that often overlooked her. He felt a growing respect, tinged with an uncomfortable guilt. His privilege, once an unexamined birthright, now felt heavier, a silent accusation against the quiet resilience of Lena's existence. He wondered what stories lay behind her tired but kind eyes, what dreams she held in her heart. That evening, the quiet of Elias's apartment felt less like solace and more like an echo chamber for his thoughts. He poured a glass of amber liquid, but its warmth did little to settle the restlessness within. He found himself drifting towards the worn armchair, his mind pulling him back, not to the recent bus ride, but to a time long before. He pictured his grandmother, her hands gnarled from years of hard work, her eyes sparkling with stories from the old country. She was the anchor of their immigrant family, a woman whose strength was woven into every fiber of his childhood. The lullaby was hers, a melody born of hardship and hope, carried across an ocean, sung in a language that was slowly fading from their grasp. He remembered her, sitting on the porch swing, Clara nestled in her lap, Elias leaning against her knee. Her voice, cracked but full of love, would weave the tale of the little star, lost but always shining. And then, that unique, almost whimsical lyrical twist, a minor key change, a specific, forgotten phrase. "Only our family sings it like this, my little ones," she would whisper, a secret passed down through generations, a thread of magic connecting them to a distant past. The warmth of that memory quickly chilled as Clara's shadow drifted into view. Clara, his younger sister, all bright eyes and boundless energy, who had clung to their grandmother's stories and songs with an almost fierce devotion. He remembered her laughter, ringing through the small house, and the way she'd mimic their grandmother's accent, making them all chuckle. But the laughter faded, replaced by the sharp, bitter taste of a memory he had tried to bury for 2 decades. The fight. A foolish, petty argument exacerbated by his own academic arrogance, his dismissal of her artistic dreams as frivolous. He had been so consumed by his ambition, by the relentless climb up the academic ladder, that he hadn't seen the pain in her eyes, the hurt that festered and deepened. He had dismissed her, not just her dreams, but not her. And in his pride, he had let her walk away, convinced she would eventually come back, convinced she needed him more than he needed her. He had been wrong. The memory of her angry, tear-filled face, her final, cutting words, still felt as fresh and raw as if it had happened yesterday. It was a wound he had allowed to fester, a chasm of his own making. The lullaby, once a sweet echo of childhood, was now a haunting reminder of his failure. He had built a life of impressive intellect, a fortress of solitude, adorned with accolades and publications, but inside it was hollow, haunted by the ghost of a sister he had pushed away. His academic pursuits, once a source of pride, now felt like an elaborate excuse for emotional distance, a shield against the messy, unpredictable demands of genuine human connection. He had chosen the sterile silence of intellectual pursuit over the vibrant, sometimes chaotic symphony of family. He stared out his window at the glittering, indifferent city lights, a lonely figure framed by the perfectly ordered chaos of his apartment. The truth, stark and undeniable, settled heavily in his chest. He had lost the most important thing, not because of some external force, but because of his own pride, his own inaction. The song, humming stubbornly in his mind, was no longer just a mystery to be solved. It was a demand that he confront his greatest regret, and perhaps, finally, find a path to redemption. Deep in the cavernous, dimly lit storage room of his apartment building, Dr. Elias Thorne felt a familiar dust settle over him, both literally and metaphorically. The air was thick with the scent of forgotten things, old newspapers, mothballed clothes, and the lingering presence of a life he had carefully compartmentalized. He moved with a quiet determination, pushing aside boxes labeled Tax Returns, 2005, and Conference Proceedings, searching for something far more precious. Each cardboard box he unearthed felt like prying open a tomb, revealing layers of a past he had consciously buried. The disarray around him, the forgotten possessions, felt like a physical manifestation of his neglected family ties, a silent accusation in the gloom. He knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified him, that somewhere in this dusty archive lay the tangible proof he needed. Deep in his forgotten storage, the professor seeks clues to a 20-year-old mystery, hoping to find a piece of his lost sister. Finally, his fingers brushed against a smaller, worn wooden crate tucked beneath a pile of old textbooks. Inside, amidst dried-out art supplies and faded school projects, he found it. A child's handmade book. Its cover a mosaic of brightly colored, slightly faded crayon drawings. It was Clara's. His breath caught in his throat. He opened it, his hands trembling. On one page, a whimsical drawing of a moon cradling a star were the carefully printed lyrics to the lullaby, penned in Clara's distinctive, looping, childish hand. And there, unmistakable, was the unique lyrical change, a small, almost imperceptible shift in the melody's rhythm, just as his grandmother had taught them. A tender ache spread through Elias's chest, a mix of overwhelming tenderness and the sharp sorrow of 2 decades of absence. This wasn't just a song. It was a signature, a family crest, a forgotten childhood book, filled with his sister's drawings and the lullaby's secret lyrics, proves the song's unique origin. Back in the stark, quiet order of his apartment, the worn children's book felt like a profound weight in Elias's hands. The faded crayon drawings of stars and smiling moons, the innocent, sprawling script of Clara's childhood, were a stark contrast to the sterile academic texts that usually filled his shelves. He traced the unique lyrical alteration with a trembling finger, the physical evidence of the lullaby's singular nature pressing down on him. This wasn't a phantom memory. It was real, tangible. The weight of his past, the raw ache of his sister's absence, pressed against him with renewed urgency. He couldn't ignore this. He wouldn't. The connection to Lena, to the janitor on the bus, was too profound, too impossibly precise to dismiss. Time, he knew, was irreversible. But perhaps, just perhaps, reconciliation wasn't. Holding the past in his hands, the professor knows he can no longer hide from the truth, or from the janitor. The next morning, Elias found himself observing Lena with new eyes. He watched her push her cleaning cart down a long, empty university hallway, her movements efficient and quiet. There was a quiet dignity in her posture, a focused resilience in the way she meticulously wiped down a railing, then polished a glass door. Her worn uniform was spotless, her simple brown ponytail neatly tied. Elias saw past the surface, seeing not just a janitor but the echoes of his own immigrant grandmother. That same quiet strength, that unwavering dedication to honest work, despite life's hardships. He felt a deeper sense of empathy bloom within him, a connection that transcended their disparate social stations. He saw more than a janitor. He saw the echoes of his grandmother's strength in Lena's quiet determination. Later that afternoon, tucked away in his office, Elias grappled with the unspoken question. The small children's book lay open on his desk, a testament to the truth he now held. But how did one approach a near stranger with such a deeply personal, almost fantastical revelation? He rehearsed conversations in his head, discarding opening lines as too abrupt, too academic, too intrusive. "Excuse me, I believe you were humming my grandmother's lullaby, specifically the one with the altered third verse." No, too much. He feared alienating her, or worse, making her feel uncomfortable or suspicious. His intellectual mind, so adept at dissecting complex theories, found itself fumbling with the delicate nuances of human emotion. He needed to be gentle, respectful, and above all, clear. How do you ask a stranger about a song that holds your deepest family secret? The professor wrestles with the perfect approach. The sprawling university library, usually a fortress of quiet study, hummed with the late afternoon energy of students. Elias sat at a desk overlooking the main atrium, ostensibly grading papers, but his gaze kept drifting. He saw Lena near the information desk, her cleaning cart momentarily abandoned. A young, visibly flustered student, clutching a handful of overdue books, approached her, clearly lost. Lena, despite her own exhaustion etched around her kind eyes, listened patiently. Elias watched as she gently pointed to a section, then walked with the student a few steps, a soft smile on her face. The student's shoulders relaxed, a grateful nod exchanged. It was a small, selfless gesture, yet in the often impersonal halls of academia, it shone like a beacon. Elias felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet admiration for her innate compassion. It was a stark contrast to the cutthroat ambition he often witnessed, a reminder that true human connection existed in the simplest acts. Back in his office, as twilight bled across the campus, Elias found himself staring at his computer screen, the blinking cursor mocking his attempts at academic productivity. The lullaby, and with it, the ghost of Clara, had taken root in his mind, consuming his thoughts, making it impossible to focus on anything else. He picked up the worn children's book Clara had illustrated, tracing the unique lyrical variation with his thumb. The weight of this secret, this impossible connection, was growing heavier with each passing hour. He felt a profound restlessness, a deep-seated ache that superseded any intellectual curiosity. He realized then that holding on to this secret, this nascent hope, was far more painful than the risk of confronting Lena. The unfinished manuscript of his latest novel lay open, a symbol of his stagnation, a story waiting for its own resolution, much like his life. He needed answers, not just for himself, but for the quiet memory of his sister. Later that evening, the university cafeteria was mostly empty, echoing with the clatter of a few late-night diners. Elias, needing a distraction and a strong coffee, found himself queuing just as Lena approached the counter for her own break. "Good evening, Lena," he said, his voice surprisingly steady, a genuine smile touching his lips. Lena's head snapped up, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. "Professor Thorne, good evening." Her voice was soft, a little tired. "Long shift?" he asked, gesturing vaguely to her cart parked nearby. She offered a small, weary smile. "Always. But it is honest work." He nodded, feeling a surprising sense of connection, a shared humanity that transcended their vastly different stations. It was a fleeting glance, a shared moment of quiet understanding, but it strengthened his resolve. This woman, so unassuming, so kind, held a piece of his fractured past. The coffee did little to calm Elias's racing mind. Back in his office, the decision solidified. He couldn't equivocate any longer. His usual reticence, his academic caution, had to yield to a deeper, more urgent need. Despite the knot of social anxiety tightening in his stomach, he knew he had to be direct. He would wait. He would wait until Lena's shift ended, until the campus was truly quiet, and he would speak to her, not as Professor Thorne, but as Elias, a man desperate for a connection to his past. He took a deep, shuddering breath, steeling himself for the inevitable. The truth, however unsettling, had to be spoken. The moment of decision had arrived, and there was no turning back. The chill of the late evening air bit at Elias's cheeks as he stood outside the main university entrance. The grand stone archways, usually bustling with students, were now quiet and imposing. His watch ticked relentlessly, each second amplifying the dread and intense anticipation swirling within him. Lena's shift was almost over. His hands were clammy, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Every distant sound, every shadow, seemed to heighten the stakes of this impending confrontation. He felt utterly vulnerable, stripped of his academic armor, exposed to a raw emotional truth. The air crackled with unspoken questions, questions that, in mere moments, might finally find their answers or be lost forever. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant city exhaust. Elias stood near the university's main entrance, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, every passing minute stretched into an eternity. Then, through the glass doors, he saw her. Lena Petrova, pushing her cleaning cart, her shift finally over. She emerged into the amber glow of the streetlights, pulling her jacket tighter. Elias took a fortifying breath, the academic calm he usually exuded nowhere to be found. "Lena?" he called, his voice surprisingly steady, though a tremor ran through his hand. Lena stopped, turning, her tired eyes widening slightly in surprise at seeing the professor. "Dr. Thorne?" she asked, a question in her voice. He stepped closer, the moment feeling surreal, momentous. He looked at her, then down at his scuffed shoes, and finally, he began to hum. It was soft at first, almost imperceptible, then a little stronger, the distinct, ancient melody of his grandmother's lullaby, complete with the unique, altered phrase. His voice, usually reserved for lectures and quiet contemplation, trembled with the weight of decades. Lena's face, etched with the day's fatigue, transformed. Her brow furrowed, her lips parted slightly, and her eyes, usually so gentle and unassuming, widened in a mixture of disbelief and a flicker of something Elias couldn't quite place. Alarm? Recognition? The humming continued, a fragile bridge across the chasm of their different worlds. He saw the exact moment the melody resonated with her, the subtle tension in her shoulders. She clutched the strap of her worn bag tighter. How do you know that song?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant city hum, hushed as if speaking too loudly might break a spell. Her gaze darted around, as if searching for an explanation in the empty campus grounds. Elias stopped humming, his own breath catching. It's a very old song," he began, his voice softer now, earnest. "A family song, from my grandmother. I heard you humming it on the bus the other night." He watched her, trying to convey reassurance, to quell the rising alarm he sensed in her. "It's not just any lullaby," Elias continued, his hands, usually so precise, gesturing slightly. "My grandmother was an immigrant, like you, Lena. She brought it with her from the old country, but the version we knew, it had a small change, a specific lyrical twist that she taught only to me and my sister Clara. It was like a secret code, a part of our family story, a way she kept her culture alive." He paused, searching Lena's face for understanding. No one else knew that specific variation. "Not exactly. She said it was a star to guide us home, a reminder of where we came from, no matter how far we roamed." His voice was raw with emotion, the vulnerability a stark contrast to his usual professorial demeanor. Lena listened intently, her initial guardedness slowly softening, replaced by a dawning comprehension. Her eyes remained fixed on his, a flicker of shared understanding passing between them, a recognition of something ancient and deeply personal. Lena's gaze dropped to the pavement, then back to Elias, a profound realization taking hold. "My grandmother," she began, then corrected herself, shaking her head slightly. "No, not my grandmother. An old friend. She taught it to me when I first came to the city. I was so lost, so scared, and she was so kind. She said it was a song of comfort, a song to remember home." Elias's heart pounded, a frantic, hopeful rhythm. "An old friend?" he pressed, barely daring to breathe. Did she ever talk about her family? Did she say anything about a difficult relationship, perhaps with a brother or her parents?" Lena nodded slowly, her eyes wide, with a different kind of recognition now, a shared memory blossoming between them. "Yes," she confirmed, her voice hushed. "She said she had a difficult relationship with her family, a painful one. She had left them a long time ago. She felt misunderstood. But she still loved them, I think." The pieces were falling into place, fitting with a terrifying, beautiful precision. Elias felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and exhilarating. This was it, the moment he had unknowingly been preparing for decades. "Her name," he urged, his voice tight with an urgent, desperate hope. "What was her name, Lena? The friend who taught you the song?" Lena looked at him, her gentle face now etched with the gravity of the revelation. The name hung in the cool night air, suspended between them, a ghost made real. "Clara," she said, her voice soft but clear. Her name was Clara, Clara Thorne. The world tilted on its axis. Elias gasped, a choked sound escaping his lips. Clara. His sister. The name, once a whisper of pain and regret in his mind, was now a tangible, living presence. A wave of overwhelming relief, profound shock, and an impossible, earth-shattering joy crashed over him. His vision blurred, tears welling in his eyes, hot and unstoppable. He had found her. Or rather, Lena had found her for him. Elias's carefully constructed composure shattered, decades of suppressed grief and longing bursting forth. Tears streamed down his face, carving paths through the stoic mask he had worn for so long. He didn't try to stop them, couldn't. Each tear was a release, a drop of the ocean of regret and love he had carried. Lena, witnessing the raw, powerful emotional breakdown of the usually reserved professor, understood the magnitude of the moment without a single word being exchanged. She reached out, her hand, calloused from work, gently resting on his arm. Her touch was warm, comforting, a silent acknowledgement of the shared humanity that transcended their different stations in life. Elias leaned into it, his shoulders shaking with the force of his sobs. The quiet dignity of the scene, two strangers bound by an ancient song and a shared secret, was profound. The chill of the night had settled, but Elias barely felt it. His entire being was focused on Lena, who now sat beside him on a cold university bench, her hands clasped in her lap. "Clara," Lena began, her voice soft, carrying a hint of a melodic accent. She was different. When I first came to this city, I was so lost. Everything was new, strange. I was cleaning offices downtown, barely making enough to eat. Clara found me, I think, sleeping in a park. Elias's heart clenched. His sister, in a park. She saw I was scared, alone. She brought me food, helped me find a better place to stay. She had this way, like she saw past all the dirt and the tiredness right into your soul. Lena's eyes, usually tired, sparkled with the memory. She taught me the lullaby. Said it was from her grandmother, a song to remind me of home, to keep me safe. She said it was a star to guide me, just like her grandmother used to say. Elias listened, a fresh wave of tears blurring his vision. This was his Clara, the kind, artistic soul he had lost. She spoke of her family, Lena continued, her gaze turning distant. But not often. It was clear there was a lot of pain. She said she had a brother, a very clever one, who became a professor. She felt misunderstood, like her dreams weren't important compared to his big academic ambitions. Elias flinched, the words a direct hit to his chest. Story, ambition. Story, his pride. Lena's gentle voice was a mirror, reflecting the ugly truth of his past actions. She loved him, though. I could tell, even when she spoke of the arguments, the distance. Her eyes always held this longing. She said she thought of reaching out, many times. But her pride, she said, was a stubborn thing. And she worried he wouldn't understand, that he had moved on to a world where she no longer fit. The weight of 2 decades of silence, of missed opportunities, crushed Elias. He had been so consumed by his own intellectual pursuits, so convinced of his sister's irrationality, that he had never once truly considered her pain, her perspective. Lena stood, her movement quiet and deliberate. Clara moved away a few years after that. She said she found a small town, a quieter life. But before she left, she gave me something. She said, "Lena, if you ever meet my brother, if you ever find the right person who truly understands this song, give them this. I kept it safe, always." Elias, still reeling, watched as Lena led him from the bench, across the dimly lit campus, to a small, unassuming apartment building just a few blocks away. Her home was humble but meticulously clean, filled with a quiet warmth. From a worn wooden box on a small shelf, Lena retrieved a faded, slightly crumpled envelope. Her fingers, calloused from work, handled it with reverence. "Here," she said, her voice barely a whisper, extending it to Elias. The envelope was old, the paper thin, and on it, in a familiar, elegant script that made Elias's breath hitch, were 2 words: "My brother." Elias stared at the envelope, his hand trembling as he took it. It felt impossibly light, yet its weight was immense, burdened with 2 decades of silence, regret, and unspoken love. His sister's handwriting, so clear, so familiar, was a punch to his gut. He could almost hear her voice in his mind, echoing from the past. He ran a thumb over the faded ink, tears welling in his eyes. To open it felt like unearthing a tomb, unleashing emotions he wasn't sure he could bear. I can't, he whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. He clutched the letter to his chest, the paper crinkling softly. It's been so long. What if it's full of anger? Blame? Lena gently placed a hand on his arm. Her touch was warm, reassuring. Clara was never angry, Elias, just sad. And she wanted you to know. She would want you to read it. She wanted you to find her. Taking a shuddering breath, Elias finally carefully broke the seal. The paper inside was folded neatly. His eyes scanned the familiar loops and flourishes of his sister's hand, a lump forming in his throat. It wasn't a letter filled with anger or blame, but with an overwhelming, enduring love. Clara wrote of missing him, of regretting the harsh words, of understanding, in hindsight, his drive, even if she couldn't share it. She spoke of the lullaby, a shared piece of their grandmother's heart. She admitted her own stubborn pride, her fear of rejection, and, at the bottom, almost an afterthought, was a simple, faded phone number. I'm in Willow Creek now, Elias, the letter concluded. Asterisk, a quiet life, but I've never stopped thinking of you. If you ever find this, if you ever think of me, please call. Your sister, Clara. Asterisk. Elias crumpled the letter to his chest, his sobs shaking his entire frame, but through the tears, a fragile, radiant smile broke through. Forgiveness. Hope. A path back to her. Lena watched him, her own eyes glistening, but a gentle, peaceful smile played on her lips. She had held this secret, this fragile link, for years, never quite understanding its full significance, but always trusting Clara's intuition. Now, seeing the raw, cathartic relief wash over Elias, she understood. Her simple act of kindness, her quiet resilience, her unwavering loyalty to a friend, had bridged a chasm that decades of pride and silence had carved. She had reconnected two souls, two pieces of a broken family, with nothing more than a hummed melody and a faithfully kept letter. In her humble apartment, far from the grand halls of academia, Lena felt a profound, quiet joy. It was a joy that money couldn't buy, a testament to the enduring power of human connection and the extraordinary impact of an ordinary life. The morning light, usually a cold, indifferent presence in Elias's meticulously ordered apartment, now felt almost warm. He sat at his desk, the crumpled letter from Clara clutched in his trembling hand. 20 years. 2 decades of silence, of a chasm that had widened with every passing year, suddenly brought to a pinpoint focus by a janitor's humming. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, almost painful rhythm. This wasn't an academic problem to be analyzed, nor a narrative to be crafted in the safe anonymity of a pseudonym. This was raw, terrifyingly real. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind that drew air from the very bottom of his lungs, and with a mix of desperate hope and profound fear, he dialed the number. The rotary dial of the old phone felt heavy, each turn a commitment, each ring a drumbeat to a moment he had simultaneously craved and dreaded for half his life. The ringing seemed to stretch into an eternity before a hesitant voice answered. "Hello?" it said, slightly guarded, yet achingly familiar. Elias's throat constricted. "Clara?" he managed, his voice a hoarse whisper, barely recognizable even to himself. A stunned silence on the other end. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "Elias, is that really you?" The guardedness in her voice softened, replaced by an unmistakable tremor of disbelief. He launched into a halting explanation, mentioning Lena, the lullaby, the letter. As he spoke, the dam of 2 decades burst. Apologies, regrets, and a tentative, fragile forgiveness flowed through the wires, unspoken for so long. "I'm so sorry, Clara. For everything." His eyes burned, tears blurring his vision as he clutched the receiver, a fragile, hopeful smile breaking through his grief. He hung up the phone, the click echoing in the sudden quiet of his apartment. A profound sense of relief washed over him, a physical weight lifting from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he carried. They had talked for nearly an hour, navigating the emotional minefield of their past with a newfound tenderness. Clara was still in the city, and they had agreed to meet. A tentative step, a fragile bridge built across a chasm of 20 years, but it was a step nonetheless. Elias walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights that no longer seemed so lonely. The academic texts on his shelves, the accolades, the quiet order of his life, none of it held the immense value of the connection he had just re-established. His heart, once a guarded fortress, now swelled with purpose, ready to embrace a future where family, not solitude, was the cornerstone. 2 days later, Elias sat at a small, unassuming table in a quiet cafe, his heart a drum against his ribs. The clinking of porcelain, the murmur of distant conversations, all faded as a woman walked through the door. Older, yes, her hair threaded with silver, lines etched around eyes that were still unmistakably Clara's. Her gaze swept the room, hesitant, then met his. A gasp escaped her lips. Elias pushed himself up, his legs unsteady. They moved towards each other, slowly at first, then with accelerating urgency. In an instant, decades of unspoken words, of regret and longing, collapsed into a single, fierce embrace. Tears, hot and unstoppable, streamed down Elias's face, mirroring hers. He held her tightly, inhaling the scent of her, a familiar anchor in a world that had felt adrift for too long. Clara. He choked out, the name a prayer. My brother. She whispered back, her voice thick with emotion, the physical contact shattering the invisible wall that had separated them for 20 years. Hours melted away as Elias and Clara sat, sharing stories, regrets, and the fragmented pieces of lives lived apart. They laughed, they cried, slowly mending the tattered edges of their shared history. Elias spoke of his academic life, his secret novels, and the crushing weight of his pride. Clara, in turn, spoke of her own journey, of finding solace in unexpected places. Later, Lena Petrova arrived, a gentle smile gracing her lips, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Elias, his voice full of profound gratitude, introduced her to Clara. Lena, he explained, is why we are here. She brought us back to each other. Lena, humble as ever, simply nodded, her eyes warm and kind. The three of them, an unlikely trio, sat at the table, a new, fragile family forged from forgotten melodies and unexpected kindness. Laughter, lighter and more genuine than Elias had known in years, filled the air. Weeks later, Elias sat at his desk, the Golden Gate Bridge, a silent sentinel outside his window. But the view no longer felt lonely. He was writing again, his next novel infused with a new purpose, a profound understanding of human connection. Clara was a regular presence in his life now, their bond rebuilding, stronger than before. And Lena, the quiet janitor, had become a dear friend, their conversations often ranging far beyond the university hallways. The lullaby, once a haunting ghost of his past, now played in his mind as a melody of enduring love, a symbol of redemption found. Elias smiled. His academic achievements, his secret literary success, all seemed secondary. True legacy, he understood now, wasn't built on ambition or accolades, but on the unbreakable threads of love that wove through generations, sometimes getting lost, but never truly severed. This was the real inheritance of the heart.